My guest today is Mauricio Umansky. You've built this really incredible and iconic brand.
Truth is, we haven't built it yet. We're still building it.
You've worked with billionaires and royalty and celebrities.
It's a lot of fun to deal with these celebrities, a lot of fun.
What has been your secret to scaling this quickly?
Having no fear, surrounding myself with the most incredible team.
You are in business with your daughters.
Yeah, they're great, the best. The biggest problem is everybody's working for the benefit of themselves and not for the benefit of the client. We need to put the client first, period, end of story.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Luxury Presence podcast. My guest today is Mauricio Umansky, who, of course, is one of the top industry leaders, founder and CEO of the agency, which he has scaled to over 100 offices internationally, and one of the top agents in the country with over $5 billion in real estate sales personally. In this conversation, we talk about some of the lessons he learned in his early career, the advice he would give to new agents starting out today, and we get into some spicy topics around private listings and clear cooperation. This is an episode you don't want to miss. It's one I really enjoy. Let's get into it. I'm so excited to have you on. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. I'm a huge fan of what you've built at the agency. But before we get into all of that, I'd love to hear about your early career, before real estate, how you came to the US, and what ultimately led you to start a career in real estate.
Well, Walter, thank you so much. It's great to be here. But oh my God, I don't know if I can go back that far in my head. You know, as you get older and older, you start forgetting your early career. But we moved here to Los Angeles in 1976. I was a 6-year-old boy from Mexico City, born in Mexico City. From immigrant grandparents that immigrated from Russia, primarily Russia, most bunch of Eastern European countries. I'm a second generation Mexican. I love Mexico. I consider myself a Mexican. I consider myself an American as well. I love the U.S. So I have both citizenships, and I just love that. We're Mexican Jews, which is a very unique breed. There's not a lot of us out there in this world. But that's what we are, and I love it. We moved here in 76 after I was cured from a blood disease. That was just kind of a lucky thing. Moved here in 1976. My parents moved out here with the idea of diversifying their businesses from Mexico. Mexico was going through a lot of political turmoil, and they wanted to diversify. So they came out here. My father, grandfather, everybody was in the textile business. Eventually when I got into work, that was the first job I did, which was get into textiles. And that's kind of where I learned how to sell. That was the beginning of my experience in terms of actually like selling. And one of the unique things that happened there is that, when you're selling textiles, you're selling hundreds and hundreds of thousands of yards, right? Like I remember my orders were 100,000 yard order, 80,000 yard order, 200,000 yard order. And I would come back and my father would give me the pricing and I would, say, okay, I'm selling it for $1.33. And then the client would negotiate and, get me down to $1.29.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back to my father and I'd be like, Dad, I got, $100,000 order at $1.29. And he's like, oh man, you need to go back and get me $1.31 or $1.31.5 or something like that. I'm like, really? We're going to go fight for 2 pennies? And then, he takes out the calculator and he's like, look, we sell, whatever we sell, I don't remember, 20 million yards a year or whatever that is. Multiply that by 2 pennies. That's our profit.
Yeah.
Don't get me 2 pennies. And so I really learned how to negotiate hard. And I learned the value of the penny, which really, translates to the value of the dollar, which I've used that lesson a lot in terms of the way I negotiate now, 20, 30, 50, $100 million deals. I still focus on the penny.
Yeah.
And on fractions and eighths of percentage points. Nobody else does that. Everybody's, talks about, reducing a commission.
Yeah.
And, they reduce a commission by half a point or by a point. I'm like, there's a lot of eighths between, 1 and 2 and between 2 and 3, right? Like we can negotiate 2 and 5/8, 2 and 6/8, like, so that's kind of how I go about it. And again, when you're selling, in my career, my top year was, $625 million of sales personally without a team. And that year I became the number 3 agent in the country, number 1 in California. But when you multiply $625 million of the sales by, an eighth of a percentage point, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, you're really negotiating every single cent at the end of the day, and you add them all up, and it can really translate into a lot of sense.
Yeah. So you were exposed to entrepreneurship from a young age, it sounds like, and you then went out and started your own clothing line before you got into real estate. What were some of the lessons learned there, and ultimately, how did you decide real estate is the career for you?
Yeah, so when I was selling textiles, we sold. I had an account that I was selling to called 90265, and I really liked their clothing. It was super cool. 90265, for everybody that doesn't know, is the Malibu zip code. So it was men's activewear line, T-shirts, shorts. They had some really cool things going on. They had Pierce Brosnan on as their face of the business, and that was the first transaction I did. They were not doing much in sales. It was really a local business. They were doing about, I think, $300,000 in sales, and I negotiated to buy the company.
Yeah.
We bought the company ultimately and grew it from 300,000 in sales to 30 million in sales.
Yeah.
Basically we took it from just local, and we changed it from a men's activewear line to a women's activewear line. We were actually the first ones to do a lot of garment dye and to make those big sweatshirts with the leggings and all of that activewear fun stuff. But I think one of the biggest lessons I learned is that, I wanted to get into all the big department stores. And at that point, I was at department store world. It was Federated. It was Saks Fifth Avenue, Bloomingdale's, all of these that, JCPenney was the biggest. That doesn't even exist anymore. That's just a bunch of warehousing right now. And I wanted to get into JCPenney because that would have just taken us to a whole other level. And I in order to sell to JCPenney, you had to have a vendor number. A vendor number allowed you to at least have an appointment with the buyers. They had regional buyers. They had 66, 70 regional buyers. And that allowed you to get the appointment. But I didn't have a vendor number. And I remember somebody telling me, if you want to get something done, you start with God and you work your way down. And so I picked up the phone. I called up the CEO, JCPenney. I was a kid. I was 24 years old, 23 years old.
Yeah.
Picked up the phone. I'm like, hey, I'd like to show you something. I'm going to fly down to Plano, Texas, and show you something that I'm working on. It's a really cool, hip thing. I got the appointment. I walked in, showed him. We hit it off. And he's like, I'll get you the vendor number right now. And if you can stick around for an extra day, I'll get you an appointment with all my buyers tomorrow. Because all the buyers happened to be in Plano that week for just by coincidence. And I extended my trip. I stayed. I showed the line, and I sold all of JCPenney in 2 days. It took a huge order. So, just not having, I think there's 2 lessons that I've learned from that. Is number one is to not have the fear to make a phone call and to try and to do something. Because that fear stops us all from doing things. That is the blockage that we all have that just stops us from, proceeding. We start getting into our own head. We start wondering, well, what happens if we're rejected? What happens if I don't succeed? What happens? And it's your own head. You're creating your own blockages when you do that. So I learned to just get over that fear, just to take risks and to take chances, but also, to tell a story, in terms of the way that you sell. Storytelling is all about selling. We'll ultimately talk a little bit about that as we talked about getting into real estate. And again, starting from the top or working your way down, you want to get something done. You start from the top and you work your way down. And we ended up shipping a bunch of goods. We were doing, garment dye. It was the first time garment dye existed. It didn't really work out well. And the shops would just return the goods because the fabric shrinks, and they would just return the goods. And so I lost a bunch of money, and one of the buyers from the Federated, from Macy's, to be exact, said to me, Mauricio, why don't you just sell your company? And I'm like, somebody would buy my company? Like, I've never heard of that before, but like, sure, I'll sell it. So I ultimately sold the company. So it was kind of my first entrepreneurial experience from, going from, one business to another business, buying it, acquiring it, growing it, and then selling it. I didn't take home a ton of money because I owed a bunch of money, but, the whole experience was really great.
Yeah.
And I learned, a lot. And ultimately, a lot of those lessons, I've now used that and brought that into the growth of the agency.
Yeah, which we'll talk about in a second. The first few years in real estate, what were some of the habits that you formed that ultimately allow you to be successful?
Well, I grew up in LA. So first of all, I did have a really good, and I grew up playing sports. I grew up playing every sport, skiing, but in high school, I was in the football team, the tennis team, the soccer team, I was on all of them. So I had a really good sphere of influence. And I could sell, and I had that ability. So I basically just decided that I would start from the top down. I never said to myself, I need to sell a $200,000 house in order to sell a $2 million house, in order to sell a $20 million house. I just said, I just need to start selling big properties.
Yeah.
The first transaction I did was actually, it was a $700,000 condo for my doctor. He allowed me to, he gave me that listing. It was a great transaction. The second transaction I did was actually Kyle, my wife's ex-husband. And he gave me the opportunity to sell I think it was a $6 million house. And then I had, one of my good buddies, Mauricio Umansky, give me some opportunities. He was developing, I think the first house I sold for him was like $12 million. And then I had another good friend of mine who gave me my first job, George Santo Pietro, delivering pizzas for him. That was my first job, by the way, but I was 16 years old, so I didn't talk about that. He gave me my first job delivering pizzas for him, and he gave me some deals. And so, I quickly grew into, the 12, 15, 20. At that time, 20 was today's 100.
Yeah.
It didn't exist. You sold a $20 million house, it was like, wow. I'm dating myself, but yeah, that was 1996, 1997, 1998. We were coming out of a recession, the 91 recession, 92 recession. And I entered the market into real estate in that recession. We're kind of in a housing recession. We've been in a housing recession now for 3 years. So a lot of the memories and a lot of the, again, you learn from your experiences, right? And so, we're now going into this new recession, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit in terms of what, can be done today. But it reminds me that 1992, exit 96, the other big, huge one was 2007, 2008, exit 2011, 2012. And, then we had the COVID recession, which lasted 2 months, 3 months, but it was hard, right? It was like, film. And then obviously now we're in this housing recession that we've now been in for 3 years.
Yeah. You became the top agent at Hilton Highland back then, and then decided to leave and start your own thing. What made you want to start your own, and what was the vision?
Well, sometimes you do things out of circumstance. And I really, to be honest with you, I wanted to be partners at Hilton and Highland. I tried hard. I mean, Rick Hilton, my brother-in-law, great man. Jeff Highland, may he rest in peace. Great, one of the greatest in real estate ever. Certainly one of the gatekeepers. And I loved it, and I loved them, and I really wanted to be partners with them. And I just, I felt like I was, at that point, I was delivering 20% of their sales personally. Again, without a team. Nowadays, everybody has a team. Back in the day, we didn't have teams. And I was helping recruit a bunch of agents because of my success. And so, I would say that, out of the people that we recruited and everything, and myself, we were probably doing 40% of the business. And so I just felt like I wanted to build something with equity. And I wanted to start building that. And, nowadays, building your own team is equity. That didn't exist back then. There's different ways that, had I started today, I probably would have done things differently. I just want to be super clear. But I'm glad I did what, it's all about timing and circumstance. And at the end of the day, they just didn't want to have a partnership. They wanted to keep it for themselves, which I don't blame them. It was a great business, and et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the day, I just, I wanted to do something bigger. I felt like the tools that allowed me to accomplish becoming the number 3 agent in the country were tools that were teachable, were repeatable. They were not unique. I didn't have anything that was super special to me. I was a, Mexican immigrant with no money. And even though I had, when I say no money, I mean, I was, a middle income, certainly I wasn't on the streets, but I certainly was not a wealthy man. I didn't have anything special that was, unique to me. That what was special was my tools, my systems, the work that I did. I was the first one in the office, the last one to leave, the dedication. And that's what was special. I knew that was teachable and repeatable. My uniqueness to marketing, the way we did that, we then incorporated that into the agency. That was also teachable and repeatable. And so I wanted to create a business and a company that I could educate, train, talk about my systems and not just use them for myself. I didn't need to hoard them for myself. Like, I actually had great systems that helped us achieve great success. We brought it to the agency. We launched, some of the best real estate agents in the country at the agency, helped launch their careers. We've seen the systems work.
Yeah.
And it's been, really exciting. Now in my career, I'm preparing to start kind of on my new venture is to start kind of a masterclass, and educate and take it beyond just the agency.
Yeah.
Because I really do enjoy that moment of, teaching and training, and letting people have insights to stuff that I've learned.
Yeah.
And why not help everybody do better? And it also helps the industry.
Yeah.
The industry
really
needs a lot of help.
Yeah.
We're in trouble right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a second. I am curious, when you talk about the systems, if you could break that down more for people, what exactly you mean. Are we talking technology? Are we talking process? All of the above? What does that entail for you?
Well, I think everybody needs to sign up for my training program. Otherwise,
let's do the plug right now. Where do people go if they want to take the full?
Yeah, we're working on that, but right now we're changing it, and we're getting everything done. So I'll just reach out to me, join my Instagram and Umansky18. Stay in touch, but we've got a great program, and I'm launching it right now. So I can't plug it right now.
Yeah.
You're really getting the first peek at it.
Yeah.
I would say in about 2 weeks I'll be able to plug it. 2 or 3 weeks we'll be able to plug it. But the systems work. It's not so much that it's a technology. You need technology to keep track of everything. You need technology for your CRM system. That just helps you keep track of everything. So you use technology, but technology is not what makes you successful, right? My systems are multiple. They're legitimate steps to success.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you need to do? A lot of basics, a lot of stuff that we just need reminded of to do, like we forget.
Yeah.
Okay. Particularly in today's world with ChatGPT, AI, every contract being filled in by itself. Like, our knowledge, our power is getting lesser, not stronger.
Yeah.
And in order to sell it, you need to have that, right? So you need to remember that you have some of that knowledge and some of that power. Going back to the basics, knowledge, having, that knowledge is power, leveraging your sphere of influence.
Yeah.
But what does that mean to leverage it? How do you actually attack it? How do you actually because a lot of people talk about that. I've done a lot of coaching. Use your sphere of influence. Great. Well, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
How do I actually do that? Can somebody actually tell me how?
Yeah.
Like, how did you do it? Right. So we get into those type of systems, processes, mindset for me is very, very important. Mindset, I'm a big believer in meditation, a big believer in affirmations. Affirmations help me, just accomplish a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And visualizing helps me accomplish a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so, but everybody talks about that, and I want to take it to a step further. Like, how do I do it?
Yeah.
Right? Because the way I do it is not the way everybody should do it. But if I could tell everybody specifically the stuff that I do and stuff that helps me, then you can start tailoring that to yourself.
Yeah.
To help you and to become, a better person, a better father, a better husband, a better salesperson, happier. Okay. Yeah. When you're happier, you sell more.
Yeah.
You exude that energy, that charisma. People want to buy from somebody that's happy. They also want to buy from somebody that they feel is the most knowledgeable person in the room about any particular thing. So knowledge is superpower. Yeah. And nowadays, between texting, nobody calls anymore. Between texting, using your AI keyboard and, to text for you, to create emails for you, we're losing that. And I believe that if people fine tune that technique and fine tune, themselves to be better, they will stand out against the competition. Because one of the greatest things in this world that we need to understand is that it is so easy to be better than most.
Yeah.
It is so easy to be better than most. You can choose to be the most, or you can choose to be better than most.
Yeah.
And that's a choice that everybody can make. But it's not even hard.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Yeah. There's so many things you just touched on that I want to double click on. One is meditation.
Yeah.
And finding balance and being at your best. Can you share a little bit what your routines look like? What kind of meditation do you do?
I mean, look, some days it's all about time too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you read my book, you know that I live by the seconds and not by the minutes. So
Yeah.
it's all about how much time I have, how early I wake up. Recently I've been doing a lot of business with the Middle East, with Europe, and so I'm waking up super early,
Yeah.
and my time's a little bit more limited. But I can tell you that every morning I wake up, just my quick morning routine is I wake up, I have an ice cold glass of water. Not a room temperature, an ice cold glass of water. That's the first thing I have. And then I just sit and I meditate and I breathe. And sometimes, that could be a 20-minute meditation. Sometimes it's just a 5-minute meditation. But it's just breathing. Then I get into heavier meditations, other days when I actually have the time, on a Sunday, on a Saturday, and I could get into a heavier meditation. But I just get into it, 5 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Probably it's usually like 10 to 20. That's the normal. Meditation every single morning before I have my cup of coffee, before I do anything. As I finish my meditation, I do my affirmations. So as I come out of my meditation, I then do my affirmations, which are in essence, my goal setting for the day, my goal setting for the week, my goal setting for the month, my goal setting for the quarter, my goal setting for the year.
Yeah.
And if I have something very special happening on that particular day, I'm speaking to 5,000 agents, I'm training, I got something insane, I will specifically just, concentrate on that day. But generally speaking, on most of the days, it's just reminding myself what is all my stuff.
Yeah.
And then telling myself I'm fucking amazing, telling myself my energy is incredible, telling myself, cheating myself, right?
Yeah.
I'm the healthiest man. I'm the most energetic man. I, just continuously repeat. I'm the happiest man. Continuously repeat those type of things, right? I remind myself to be a great dad. I remind myself to be a great, husband.
Yeah.
I remind myself to do all of these things every single day. And then during the day, things become easier. Your actions start becoming innate. And because all of our actions are innate, we react to somebody honking a horn. We react to, some road rage. We react to a nasty email, a bad text message, an upset client because you left the door open or the lights on all night. They had to pay, $32 last night because you didn't turn off the lights, whatever that looks like. But these are all people, and we react to all of those things. But if we set up our day with intention, we're going to react innately to all of those things much differently than you would if you just wake up groggy, you have the alarm clock, you keep hitting snooze, you're not in the mood to get up, you finally get up because you kind of have to, but you're not really happy, you're upset that you woke up. I sleep with the windows open. That sun comes up and, my windows face east. That sun comes up, I'm up. And I don't put the pillow over my head and try to sleep again. I jump out of bed. I get excited. I can't wait to go have that, ice cold glass of water. And then go sit down and, have my 10, 15 minutes of meditation. Then I have my coffee. Yeah. Then I watch the news. Yeah. Then I read, the newspaper. And then I get into the day.
Yeah. I love that. I'm the same way. I get up early. 5:36. It's hard to have a bad day when you're getting up that early.
It is.
Yeah.
And you end up going to bed earlier too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my wife just got a real estate license last year.
Amazing.
And if she was here,
so why is she not working at the agency?
That's a good question. What advice would you give her or other agents like her that are starting out in today's market environment?
I mean, a lot of what I've already said, number one is I'll plug my training again, look for my training, plug into that. Like that is exactly what I'm working on.
Finding a mentor.
Finding a mentor.
Training or live, but finding someone who's done it who can give you the system.
So critical.
That's number one.
And by the way, the problem, I'll go back to what I was saying. I have a lot of mentors at the agency that mentor people.
Yeah.
Most mentors suck. Okay. It's just the facts. They do it, and most companies require you to do your first 3 deals with a mentor so that that they teach you. But most mentors don't teach you, and they don't do anything. They just help you with the paperwork to make sure you don't get sued, and you really don't learn anything. So find a great mentor.
Yeah.
I think literally just starting out, educating yourself and creating knowledge is the most important thing, because now you can walk into any room and talk about anything. And I'm not talking about knowledge of the real estate principles and the book and all of that stuff. I'm talking about market knowledge. Okay. You want to concentrate. We're sitting in Venice today. You want to concentrate. If I was an agent that was selling Venice, you could throw out an address right now, 630, 626th Street, and I would tell you without looking anything up. Okay. How many times it's traded in the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah.
Who owns it? Okay. I will not have to look this up. Okay.
No chat GPT.
No chat GPT.
Under the table.
No, none of that stuff. I would be able to tell you who owns it. I would be able to tell you if there was any celebrity or owners of the past that are known people that would be cool. I would tell you how much it's sold for the last 2 or 3 times, and I would tell you exactly how much it's probably worth today based on comparables. And I could spit that out at a bar having a shot of tequila or a margarita with anybody when they ask me something, and I could tell you that about the neighborhood that I'm knowledgeable about. That makes you a knowledgeable person in your industry. Okay. And it's easy to learn that. You just have to put in the time. Right. The next step, particularly as you're gaining knowledge, my opinion is read your contract. Read the purchase and sale agreement. Nobody reads it anymore. It's all fill in the blank. You don't even know what you're filling in. It's literally, you hit return. It prompts you what you're putting in, and nobody reads it. And the problem with that is that when you don't read the contract, you can't negotiate on behalf of your client. And you just can't. You can negotiate price, sure, but you better know the comps. You better know every single, comp, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to the request for repairs, when it comes to understanding inspections, when it comes to understanding water rights, when it comes to understanding all of these things, it's all in the contracts. Like it's all in the contract. I mean, not all. 90% of the stuff we need to know is in that contract from a contractual situation. So I used to be able to, I can't anymore. But not that long ago, I used to be able to, they just made so many changes. But if you said to me, Mauricio, what does 24B say on the clause? I could recite you what 24B is. I mean, I've been in so many situations where I'm in not so much a showing, sometimes in a showing, but more in an inspection when the buyer is there, the client is there, the real estate agent is there, and I hear the real estate agent say something to their buyer that's wrong. Okay? And I will say, I won't be an asshole. I'm never an asshole, but I will say, I'm so sorry. You just said something that, it's actually incorrect. It's inaccurate. I won't say it's wrong. Okay. It's inaccurate. Here's actually the way it reads, and here's the way the contract reads, and, I'll get challenged. Well, that's actually not right. And I'm like, well, actually it is. And what ends up happening in that moment is, number one, is I've negotiated a better deal for my client. But here's what just happened. The client on the other side just felt that the agent that they have representing themselves is not up to par with the agent that's on the other side. And I cannot tell you how many times when that client went to go sell the house that I sold them, I would get the call and not their agent. And not because I was soliciting their business, but rather because they were so impressed with the knowledge and the way I handled the transaction that they chose me to handle their transaction on their way out and not their person.
I heard you talk about not being an asshole, and I think I've read that you have a no asshole rule at the agency.
Rule number 1, baby.
Rule number 1. All right. How do you actually enforce it, and what's the culture like at the agency?
Yeah, we enforce it. It's hard sometimes because sometimes there's great agents that are assholes and they bring in a lot of money. And, we had that early in our career where we had somebody that was just doing unethical shit. And this person was a top agent in the company. And we had to make a real big decision because at that point we didn't have a ton of money. And this person was bringing in, quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
But was just doing a bunch of unethical stuff. Integrity was real estate practices were, not good. The definition of what we call an asshole.
Yeah.
Okay. And we chose to let this person go. And it was a really hard choice to do it. But I can tell you that when we made that choice, that culture was like solidified. And the day after we received for the next month, 2 months, 3 months after that happened, we received phone calls from real estate agents in the city saying, I didn't want to come to your company because you had this person there. And we let this person go. And even though we let go of a lot of money, we ultimately ended up recruiting a lot more by taking that risk and by standing up for, what we believed in.
Yeah.
That's just one example early. That example continues today. I don't need to give you the example because it's the same example with a different circumstance. But we really do enforce the no asshole rule.
Yeah. I always tell that's a great example. And I always tell my leaders that people watch what you do, not what you say. And when you make some of those tough decisions, you're setting the right example, and people will usually appreciate that.
Yeah.
You are in business with your daughters.
Yeah, they're great. The best.
What's that like, and how do you keep the personal relationship healthy and the business healthy? How do you manage that dynamic of working with your family?
I mean, I'm the luckiest man alive. It's they're my best friends.
Yeah.
And I get a chance to see them every single day, and I get to have a relationship with them that is beyond the father-daughter relationship at this point. But now it's not. And I treat them as partners. I don't treat them as employees. I don't treat them like, I'm not trying to make life hard on them. I'm also not trying to make life easy on them. I do not believe in nepotism. I believe people need to work to get to the right place. But I also don't believe that you need to make life harder on your kids just because they're your kids, right? So, they do have opportunities. And it goes back to everything I say, whether they open the door and walk into that next room, whether they take advantage of the opportunity that they have, that's up to them.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not spoon feeding them. I'm not doing anything like that. They have the choice. And they do it, and they're amazing. Farah is an absolute queen. She's an absolutely, incredible at her trade. When I talk to you about knowledge, when I talk to you about all of these things that we just talked about, this woman's got it all.
Yeah.
All of it. Zero fear, fierce negotiator, all the knowledge in the world, knows the contract, knows the market, knows everything I just talked about, this woman's got it. Okay? Alexia, more of a charismatic human. Probably one of the most charismatic human beings on the planet. And the highest integrity and ethics on the planet. Okay? Literally, there's just nobody that can be a nicer human. And she's in the business now long enough to where she's gaining that knowledge. She's pretty much has it there. She's not quite up to Farah's speed on that, but she's close.
Yeah.
And she's trying really hard, and I'm really proud of her. But what you were really talking about is the relationship. And what's really cool is that we've developed a friendship. So I'm still their father.
Yeah.
But now we're business partners, and now we're friends.
Yeah.
And that friendship with the three of them, with Alexia, Sophia, and Farah, has just become amazing. I mean, they're my best friends now. It's so much fun to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great hearing you light up and as you talk about it.
Yeah.
I love that. So you've worked with billionaires and royalty and celebrities. How do you create a white glove experience for these types of very high-end clients?
Well, I think that one of the things that, they're just people. At the end of the day, and that's what people, get distracted on. It's that at the end of the day, we're all just people.
Yeah.
Right? Whether some people have Elon Musk, a lot more billions than I have. I don't even have a billion, but certainly a lot more zeros behind, him. But he's still a human. Yeah. He's still a person. Okay? He might be the richest man in the world, but he's still a person. And it's a lot of fun to deal with these celebrities. A lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to deal with these businessmen, with these heads of state, with these politicians. But at the end of the day, and you do need to treat them, with, I'm not going to say it's to respect, but it's not, as a salesperson, you don't need to be below them. You need to be at the same level.
You're not intimidated.
You cannot be intimidated.
Yeah.
And And so you need to be at that same level. You need to be comfortable enough with yourself in order to feel like you belong in the room. And what most people have struggled with is feeling like they belong in the room.
Yeah.
Okay. I see that with people with me, and I'm a normal human. Like I don't get any more normal. Okay. But I see that with people with me, they'll start shaking. They'll start this. I don't want to do business with somebody like that. I don't want to hire that person. They come in and they want to work for the agency and they can't, hold themselves straight. I don't want to work with that person. I need to work with somebody, and I want to hire somebody that feels like they belong in the room.
Yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, that's what we do. I mean, I've gotten an opportunity to work with the best people in the world. I mean, from, Michael Jordan to Lady Gaga to Prince to Michael Jackson to the Emir of Qatar to presidents. To Hugh Hefner, the Playboy Mansion. I mean, absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun.
What do you think makes a great luxury agent, especially in this kind of market? What would be the top 3 things that you look for when you're recruiting someone to come to the agency?
Well, you're talking about luxury, right? So I think knowledge in the luxury business, I think, again, I go back to knowledge. It's just such a key factor. And nobody talks about it enough.
Yeah.
And the problem is people don't even understand what that means. Like, what does knowledge mean? But I already described it. Knowledge, mindset, feeling like you belong in the room, having the confidence that you belong in the room.
Yeah.
I would say is number 2. And service.
Yeah.
Having the systems, that goes back to the technology, but having the care and the systems to give the most incredible service on the planet.
Yeah.
Okay. Answer the phone.
Yeah.
Okay. I just gained a new client, great business manager that used to be working with somebody else. And I just gained him recently. And the reason that this other person lost him was because the other person never returned the call.
Yeah.
Never returned the client's call, never returned the business manager's call. And the business manager kept getting, bad feedback. They finally got somebody. That's just the most basic, simple thing.
Yeah.
But then going from returning the call, which is the most basic thing, okay, to answering the text message, to answering the email, to just paying attention, just caring.
Yeah.
Like, that's the most basic thing. But then what makes you stand out? I just had a conversation recently with Will, I forgot his last name, how to pronounce it, but the guy that wrote the book on reasonable hospitality.
Oh, I love that book.
Great book.
Fantastic book.
Great
I
book.
sent it. That was my, the last book I sent to my entire executive team.
It's a great book. So we were just together in Nashville a few weeks ago, and there was a conversation that was happening there with a bunch of people. But, he was telling us about the experiences of that. So in my head, I was thinking to myself, well, what are moments of unreasonable hospitality that I've done in the past to really create something special? And what are moments of unreasonable hospitality that I can create and learn that in the real estate that really elevates me to become that incredible luxury salesperson?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm working on that. That's going to be something that's going to be part of my training, because I think that I want to get a little bit more concrete on that. I've got a bunch of ideas in my head already. One of the things that I'm breaking down right now is the entire, what he did in his book and what he did in his business is he broke down the entire customer touch basis from point A to point Z, right? When they walk in that door to when they leave that door, right? Delivering the check. What are they there for? What's their experience? Are they there for an engagement? Are they there celebrating their honeymoon? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Right. And so what I've started to do is we've been working now on the entire experience of the moment that we capture a client, okay, to the moment that we finish a transaction, and what are all those touch points? And I'm trying to get as many of those touch points as possible.
Yeah.
Every time we make a phone call, every time we make an email, every time we send something, every time the client is going probably the most important transaction they've ever done in their life.
Yeah.
So there's incredible moments, and incredible opportunities for us to deliver that unreasonable hospitality. And I'm figuring that out right now.
Yeah. There are 2 things you said that I think are really, really important for people to understand. If you want to deliver a great client experience, you have to pay attention to all the little details, and you need process and systems. Otherwise, your experience is going to be inconsistent. It might be great one day, but it won't be great especially if you're working with a team, if you're looking to scale. I think what you just said about process is so critical.
It's critical. You cannot count on your head if you're doing any sort of volume. If you're doing one transaction
Yeah.
A year?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So talking about scale, I want to ask about the agency. Since you started, you've rapidly grown the business, and you now have over 100 offices all around the country.
Yeah.
What has been your secret to scaling this quickly?
Having no fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surrounding myself with the most incredible team.
Yeah.
Being able to rely on the most incredible team, allowing the team to act and to be, and the Ritz-Carlton has a saying, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen, right? And they allow their housekeepers, their staff, their service staff, everybody to make a decision to deliver something extraordinary for a client. I believe that everybody that works for us the reason they work for us, the reason we hire them is because they are great people. Okay. So we let them do their job. I do not micromanage. I let them do their job. We talk high level, and we have plans, we have rocks, we have systems, we have processes, we have goals. What do we want to do? We talk about all of those things, but then I let them do their job. And if they can't do their job, they go.
Yeah.
It's
a performance-oriented
It's a
business.
performance-based business, right? Like, and when they're hired, they told me they can't do the job, right? Like, and so, but I think it goes back to processes, goal setting, and that's for the agency, but that's for the same thing for building your own real estate career as an agent. Your team, all of it are just micros of the larger piece.
Yeah. You've built this really incredible and iconic brand with the agency. How do you think about the importance of brand, and what do you want it to stand for?
Well, I love the question you've asked, but the truth is we haven't built it yet. We're still building it.
Yeah.
And I think that once you stop innovating, and once you stop thinking about your brand, and once you stop doing that, then you stop building it, and then you built it, and then it starts falling apart.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really critical piece of what you're saying. So we're building it. We're continuously willing to take risks and to innovate and to do all of those things. What does the brand stands for? The brand stands for luxury, but luxury is a service. Luxury does not necessarily mean a price point.
Yeah.
Okay, our median price is under $1 million a transaction.
Yeah.
I mean, we will handle $300,000-$400,000 transactions all day long. Our average price is about $2.6 million, the highest average price in the country, by the way.
Yeah.
Sotheby's is number 2. The brand stands for, when you look at the brand, it's first of all, the name, the agency, right? It's got Hollywood written all over it. It's got the CIA and the government written all over it. It's fast.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's innovative. It's willing to take risks. We're willing to take risks in order to be extraordinary. There was a great Harvard professor that used to say that in order to be great, you have to dare to be bad.
Yeah.
You can't be just vanilla. We're willing to do that. We're willing to take that risk. But the brand, what does it stand for? It stands for ethics. It stands for integrity. It stands for knowledge. And it stands for good.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's what the brand stands for. We're still growing it on a global basis. There's still a lot of places that don't know our brand. We're going to get them to know it. We're starting to look at South America for the first time. We're starting to look at Middle East for the first time. Europe is growing. The Caribbean has had tremendous growth. Canada has had tremendous growth. The U.S. has had tremendous growth. And then after we do, Middle East, South America, we will be really looking at the East, at Asia.
Yeah. That's great. Great expansion. You've also built a really powerful personal brand. What advice do you have for agents who are looking to build their own personal brand?
Kind of the same. Your brand, your personal brand is your company. And it's the same. You need to advertise, you need to market, you need to use the same principles on yourself. Brand yourself, brand your name.
Yeah.
Live that way.
Yeah.
Live that way. Okay.
Yeah.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier. You need to act and not just say.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of building your brand. A lot of agents today are building teams. That's a big, important brand.
Yeah.
What do they deliver? You have to identify what it is that you want your brand, your team, to deliver. Is it, the highest class service? Is it lead generation? Is it, giving, handling all of the leads? Is it training? Is it like, what are you doing for your team that makes you stand out? Make that decision and then go for it. And again, don't try to be vanilla to everybody. Like, make a decision of what you want your brand to stand for.
Yeah. What role does your website play in your business?
Yeah, our website's great. Luxury Princess, it's awesome. We love working with you guys. Our website is fantastic. It captures a lot of, people. We do a lot of lead generation, so we're hoping to get a lot of our clients searching, and our search optimization is fantastic. Our search function is fantastic, which is really important today. There's a lot of changes happening in that world right now. We'll talk about that, IDX speeds and this and that. Who the heck knows where that's going? We're thrilled. It's been, it basically is a business card that shows what the Umansky team is about. So, the importance of a website is critical because it's part of building your brand. It's part of building, what you're doing, and it is your business card. It's really important to make sure that, you have a great website.
Yeah. It's the first thing many people will see even before they meet you, right? They'll Google you, they'll look up your website. And so
not with my case, but yes.
You want to tell the story. I mean, in your case, Tom,
they've seen you. It was a little bit too much, but yeah.
They've read the books, they've seen TV, they've seen you on TV.
But it is the first thing most agents. 100%. It is an absolute critical piece of information, and it is your brand.
Yeah.
And it needs to stand for you.
Yeah. Why did you and your team choose to work with Luxury Presence on the new website?
I think it was customer service, the ease of working with you guys, the ability to work on the design functions, and the functionality of the website's great. The search engine, the search platform is fantastic, which to me is kind of the most important thing. The look of it is really nice, and so and at the end of the day, it's all about customer service, and you guys have been able to provide a tremendous amount of customer service. So
it's great to hear.
Yeah.
We also have a partnership with the agency where we provide some products and services to your agents. How important are these types of relationships with outside vendors like Luxury Presence to give your agents access to the best tools?
Partnerships are super important, and they're only going to become more and more important. In this real estate world, you get to know each other. There's a lot of consolidation happening right now in the real estate world, and having those vendors, those partners that you can rely on, that you can count on, is just makes everybody's life easier. And you start once you start building that trust and you start knowing how things work, everything just gets better and better.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the recent news from NAR about clear cooperation policy. It was a long awaited announcement. They said, we're keeping CCP in place, but added the delayed marketing exemption status. And I know you've been very vocal on this topic with the National Listing Service and area. So I'd love to hear your take on where the policy is now, what you think about it, and maybe what you think will happen in the coming months and years.
It's really hard. It's a subject that is very difficult. And the reason it's very difficult is because everybody is fighting for their own business, and they're not fighting for the good of the business. Okay. Everybody's, the data is critical. The data is the inventory, is the listings. That's what everybody's fighting for. Okay. But the decisions are being made and policies are being passed based on what's best for the company that's passing the policy. NAR is protecting their MLSs by passing the clear cooperation policy and holding on to the data and hoarding the data versus allowing outsiders to maybe improve the experience, to make it better, to make a clearer source. Then you've got Compass, going out there and taking advantage of the office exclusive and their size and saying, well, I have everything. And so therefore, if you really want to see all the inventory, you need to come to the Compass site. And then you have, the shots across the bow, which, from a business perspective have been, somewhat, brilliant. Zillow saying, well, if you're going to do that, we're not going to expose your listing. The Northwest MLS basically coming out and saying, if you're going to do that, we're not going to have your product, your listings on the MLS either. We're cutting, They were cutting off the IDX feed is what they did to Compass, which was a huge move. And, but Zillow's doing this, again, not for the good of the industry, but for the good of their business. And I love Zillow, just to be clear.
Yeah.
I really do. And I love the MLSs. And I'm friends with Robert and Compass. Okay. So I'm not shitting on anybody right now. I'm just making clear the point of what's, what people are working. My take is simple. My take is that at the end of the day, what we need to do is we need to service our client. Okay. We need to service them with knowledge, with integrity, with ethics, with everything we've talked about. If a seller wants to do a private listing, they should have the right to do a private listing. They should be, it is not the decision of the National Association of Realtors or a group of people to say, or Zillow, or a portal, or anybody to say the best way to sell your house is by putting it everywhere. It's not anybody's decision, okay? There's no question greater exposure is better. By the way, as a real estate agent, the easiest thing for me to do is put it everywhere. Why would I want to, convince a seller that they should have a private listing when all that does is make my life harder? I now have to make phone calls. I now have to go work. I now have to go find a buyer. I now actually have to do work versus just putting it everywhere. It's way easier to put it everywhere, okay? So when people think that I'm, a proponent of private listings, I'm not. They make you work harder. But there are many cases where a seller believes, and no matter how much you tell them, is willing and wants their listing to be private and not with security, whether it's just, a known individual. It doesn't matter what the reason is, okay? Should we educate the client and say, hey, you're maybe leaving a bunch of these buyers that we're not going to touch, if you don't do that? Yes, okay? So I think that needs to be allowed. I think that we need to act and service our clients at the end of the day. We need to open up the field to be able to service them. I personally believe that there should be a portal, which is what I try to do with the PLS, the private listing service. It's now out of business because of Fair Cooperation policy. But we tried to do that where we created a portal that anybody with a real estate license would have the right to see the private listing. It just wouldn't be sent out to the internet. Yeah. Okay. That you had to have a license to access it. But now that opens up the field to the people that, do work. By the way, it also eliminates AI agents. It eliminates robots. It eliminates all these things because it actually preserves our jobs because we now have to do a job. Okay. Selling a private listing is not easy. You actually have to do a job. Now, I do not believe that any brokerage should be giving concessions to create a private listing so that they can sell it to themselves so that they can double end the deal. So, and what I mean by that is if I tell you, hey, you get this listing, make it private, and if you sell it, within yourself or within our company, I'm going to improve your commission split, or I'm going to give you $5,000 for marketing, or whatever it is. If I'm making an advantage for you to do that, that should not be allowed. Okay? What we should be doing, and I want to be super clear, which is what we do. Real estate agents are in the service industry. Period. End of story. We're not in Hollywood. Yes, we're on television. Yes, we're all these things. We are in the service industry, and we should be servicing our clients with whatever their needs or wants are. Yeah. Period. End of story.
Yeah. Really well said. Sellers should have choice and should be educated to make that choice correctly. When they do, most will probably want to put it on the open market because that's where you sell for the highest price. But the ones that don't want to do that...
By the way, I don't necessarily agree with that statement. I don't necessarily agree that the open market sells for the highest price.
Not always, but there, in many, you go.
In most cases.
Yeah, most cases, yes.
In most cases, and I'm willing to say 99% of the cases. I'm willing to say 98% of the cases. But it is not always the highest price that the off-market sells for the most money.
What is a situation where you think a seller can get a higher price off-market than they could on the market?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is just an ultra high-end luxury project that just pretend it's $100 million house.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, this is kind of the low-hanging fruit, but there's a lot of other stuff. Yeah. If it's on the market, the person needs to sell.
Yeah.
They want to sell.
Yeah.
Okay. By them knowing that, by the buyer knowing that the person wants to sell, they're going to negotiate harder.
Yeah.
If I bring a buyer to a house that nobody has access to, okay, and they don't want to sell.
Yeah.
You want to buy, they don't want to sell.
Yeah.
You're going to raise your offer because you're the one that wants to buy. There's a big difference between being the seller or the buyer in terms of who wants to buy. There's a buyer's market and there's a seller's market. Sometimes by having a property off the market, you can turn it into a seller's market versus a buyer's market.
Yeah.
When you're putting it on the market and you're at $100 million and you haven't sold it for 2 years, what's it worth? 80, 70, 60, 50, right? Who knows what it's worth? If it's not on the market, and $100 million homes don't sell every week, so they might sit on the market for 2 years.
Yeah.
If it's not on the market and you can actually keep it private and you bring the right buyer to that property, there's no history. There's no 2-year history. So therefore, if the buyer likes it and it suits their needs and they can afford it, they might pay me $100 million for that house.
Yeah. A quick prediction. With everything that's going on, do you think there'll be more or fewer private listings a year from now than there are today?
I think there'll be the same amount.
Same amount.
I think that there'll be tools and that allow us to access them better. I think a lot of the rules, a lot of the changes will change. The private listings have never gone away. What has gone away is the way that we talk about them and market them, the way they police it, the way NAR polices it, the way the MLSs police it. It's changing absolutely daily. But again, at the end of the day, I mean, they certainly dropped a little bit just because of the fear, but they've not gone away, and it'll be the same amount. Most of the listings are not private listing, which is what's so stupid to me about this conversation. Everybody should just concentrate on 99% of the listings. That 1%, let the client do what they want to do. Why? But act with ethics, act with integrity. Brokerage firms have that responsibility to act with ethics and integrity so that they don't do it for the benefit of the biggest problem is everybody's working for the benefit of themselves and not for the benefit of the client. We need to put the client first, period, end of story. If we can do that, then everything works.
Very well said. That's a great place to end the conversation. I really appreciate you being on, Mauricio.
Thank you so much, Malte. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Buying